He laughed at her until she started speaking. And when he stopped laughing, it was already too late to pretend he didn't know who she was. Picture this moment. The marble lobby of Goldman Industries echoing with cruel laughter, while security cameras capture what he cannot yet see. Her torn coat sleeve revealing just a glimpse of something that doesn't belong on the streets. A university ring catching the afternoon light, a scar with a story nobody wants to hear. But watch how she holds her spine straight, despite the weight of hunger. Each word she speaks carries the precision of someone who once commanded boardrooms, who once had the power to change lives with a single signature. His assumption begins to crack like thin ice when her fluent Mandarin cuts through his arrogance. Then her flawless German follows. Then her musical Italian flows like water over stone. The moment his laughter dies, not gradually, but all at once, like a door slamming shut on his certainty, meet Elena. To the world rushing past her on Fifth Avenue, she's just another face in the crowd of forgotten people. Her clothes carry the story of too many nights without shelter. Her shoes have walked more miles than most people drive. But look closer. Look at her eyes. There's something in the way she watches the morning commuters that speaks of understanding. Elena positions herself carefully outside the Goldman building, not begging, not asking, simply present. Inside, Richard Goldman reviews his morning reports. Stock prices climbing, merger negotiations proceeding, the pharmaceutical division posting record profits for the third consecutive quarter. His empire built on innovation, built on taking brilliant ideas and turning them into golden realities. But today, something is different. Today, Elena doesn't move when security approaches. Today, she speaks. How many times do we judge someone without knowing the story behind their tired eyes? "Excuse me, Mr. Goldman." Her voice cuts through the marble stillness. Not the trembling plea he expects, but something else entirely. Something that makes his assistant look up from her computer screen with sudden attention. Richard turns, already forming the dismissive words. But then she continues. "Ni hao Goldman xiansheng, wo jidao ni de gongxi zuijin de bingu jihua." Perfect Mandarin, not just fluency, but the specific dialect of international boardrooms. His laughter returns, but shakier now. Very impressive. Street performers are getting more creative these days. Elena switches languages like changing masks, each one revealing a different facet of who she used to be. "Herr Goldman, Sie haben die Forschung meines Vaters gestohlen." German precision cuts through his composure. Then Italian, flowing like music through the cold lobby. "Mio padre ha inventato le medicine che hanno fatto la sua fortuna, signore." But each word leaving her lips was a piece of a puzzle he didn't want to assemble. Sometimes the past returns, not as memory, but as justice. Richard's hand trembles slightly as he notices the ring on her finger. Stanford MBA program graduation ring, 2019. His empire's hidden foundation begins to crack. The merger that made him a billionaire happened exactly 3 years ago. Hoffman Pharmaceuticals, acquired in a hostile takeover. The patents that built his current fortune, signed by a man whose name Richard learned to forget. Dr. Marcus Chen, researcher, inventor, the man who refused to compromise on safety protocols when the board demanded faster results, cheaper production, higher profits. Elena watches recognition dawn in Richard's eyes like illness spreading through a healthy body. She's waited 3 years for this exact moment, in this exact lobby, knowing he would be here for the quarterly board meeting. The irony of innovation cuts deeper than any blade. The medicines that saved Richard's reputation were built on the work of the inventor, who refused to let profit margins determine who lived and who died. In that ring was the proof of everything he had stolen. Elena's Italian carries the weight of inheritance, each syllable pronounced with the care of someone who learned it from a grandmother's lullabies. When Elena switches to French, her voice takes on the formality of diplomacy. "Mon père croyait que la médecine était un cadeau pour l'humanité, Monsieur Goldman. Vous en avez fait une arme." My father believed medicine was a gift to humanity, Mr. Goldman. You turned it into a weapon. But it's the Japanese that delivers the final blow. The language of honor of concepts Richard has forgotten exist. Watashi no chichi wa anata no tame ni shinda. Anata wa sore o shiranai dakedesu. My father died for you. You just don't know it yet. The lobby has become a theater now. Other visitors pretend to check their phones while straining to understand. Have you ever had to translate your pain into languages nobody wants to understand? It was then that he remembered the name he tried to forget. Recognition dawns like illness. His assistant's sharp intake of breath tells him she remembers the name too. The scandal that was buried under legal agreements and charity donations. Elena has waited with strategic patience. 3 years of learning the rhythms of his world, of understanding when he would be most vulnerable. The weight of revelation settles around them like snow. Richard realizes that every newspaper he didn't read, every report he chose not to review, it was all leading to this moment. His phone continues buzzing. Stock options, lunch reservations, the machinery of wealth grinding forward while the foundation crumbles beneath it. 3 years. She waited 3 years for this moment. Her father didn't die. He was murdered by greed. The hospital Marcus Chen never left wasn't supposed to be his final home. Alzheimer's research was his specialty, his passion, his gift to a world that seemed determined to forget everything important. But experimental treatments for memory loss became the testing ground for drugs that would generate billions while destroying the researcher's mind. Elena's medical degree from Harvard gathers dust in a storage unit she can no longer afford to visit. Her education interrupted by lawsuits, bankruptcy, and a father who slowly forgot her name while she fought to preserve his reputation. The apartment that became a cardboard box tells its own story. First the furniture, sold to pay legal fees, then the photographs, except for one of her father receiving the Nobel Prize nomination. Richard's family Christmas card sits on his desk upstairs, showing children who will never know want, educated by money earned from another man's stolen life. How much is a life worth when it stands in the way of profit? In that moment, he was the one on the ground. Richard's laughter dies its final death, not in his throat, but in the air itself, as if the universe refuses to carry the sound forward. Elena delivers her final linguistic gift. Russian, spoken with the authority of someone who has learned to survive in the coldest places on earth. Wy mogli by bit otkom moemu otcu, vmesto etogo vi stali ego ubici. You could have been a father to my father. Instead, you became his killer. The security guards take an instinctive step backward. Their training covers theft, disruption, violence, but not this. Not the moment when moral authority shifts like tectonic plates. Richard sees his empire's new emperor standing before him, not crowned in gold, but wearing the torn coat of someone who chose truth over comfort. He finally understood the real price of his success. She didn't want revenge. She just wanted him to remember. Eleanor remains standing when Richard stammers an offer of a chair, money, anything to restore the distance between guilt and innocence. 93 patents. Elena knows them all by number, by date, by the nights her father stayed awake perfecting formulas that would save lives, each one now a gravestone, marking what Richard's greed buried, what his success cost the world. Elena's hunger has become currency. She chooses to remain thin, homeless, visible, a living reminder walking through the city of what wealth truly costs. The medical journals that celebrated Richard's company's breakthroughs never mentioned Marcus Chen. The patients whose lives were saved never knew the name of the man whose work was stolen to heal them. Sometimes the greatest wealth is being able to sleep in peace. In the end, the most powerful words were the ones she didn't say. Eleanor stands in the lobby as recognition settles in Richard's chest like a weight he will carry forever. Her final words come not in anger, but with the quiet devastation of someone who has already grieved what she lost. My father used to say that the measure of a man isn't what he builds. It's what he's willing to destroy to build it. The choice sits before Richard now like a crossroads he cannot avoid. He can walk away, return to his office, continue the board meeting as if nothing happened. Or he can face the mirror Elena has held up to his empire. Elena's 9 languages become 9 different ways to say goodbye, each one closing a door he didn't know was open. In Mandarin, she offers forgiveness he hasn't earned. In German, she grants absolution he hasn't sought. In Italian, she speaks peace he has never known. As she turns to leave, her figure begins to disappear into the crowd of mourning commuters. What would you do if your privilege was built on someone else's fall from grace? But Elena doesn't destroy anything. She simply reveals what was already broken. The lobby returns to its normal rhythm, but something fundamental has changed. Richard's assistant pretends to work, but her fingers hover over the keyboard without typing. Upstairs, the board meeting continues without its chairman. But the foundation of everything they discuss has shifted. The human cost of progress, the real price of success. The voices that are silenced so others can speak. The ring on Elena's finger wasn't just proof of her education. It was proof that brilliance doesn't disappear when you steal it. Truth doesn't vanish when you refuse to acknowledge it. Elena walks down Fifth Avenue, disappearing into the crowd that once made her invisible. But she's not invisible anymore. She's a reminder walking through the city, a conscience that cannot be silenced. Behind her, in the lobby of Goldman Industries, a billionaire learns what it feels like to be poor. Not in money, but in spirit. Not in possessions, but in peace. Have you ever carried a secret so heavy, it changed the way you walked through the world? Elena has carried the weight of her father's erasure for 3 years. Every morning, waking up on the streets while Richard Goldman slept in silk sheets. But today, that weight begins to shift. The loss of her father, the theft of his legacy, the destruction of her own life. These wounds don't heal with a single conversation, but they begin to breathe. They begin to speak. They begin to be witnessed. The homeless woman outside Goldman Industries becomes a story that spreads through the building like wildfire. A woman who spoke 9 languages, a billionaire who was left speechless. Elena doesn't know about these conversations. She's walking toward the shelter where she volunteers when she's not searching for justice, but the ripples of her words spread outward, like circles in water. Each language Elena spoke carried its own grief. Mandarin reminded her of the conference in Beijing, where her father presented his breakthrough research. German brought back memories of the university where he met her mother, where he learned that medicine was love made visible. Italian held the echo of her grandmother's prayers, whispered in a language of faith and family. French carried the weight of diplomatic silence, the careful words spoken at her father's funeral. Russian reminded her of the hospital where her father spent his final years, where immigrant doctors tried to preserve dignity. Japanese brought back the meditation practices her father taught her, the belief that peace could be found even in chaos. And English. English was the language of loss itself, the language of legal documents and foreclosure notices. But today, Elena used her languages for something other than survival. She used them for truth, for justice, for the voice her father no longer had. Truth doesn't require wealth to be valid. Her father's truth lived in the medicines that still saved lives, even though his name was stripped from their labels. His truth lived in the daughter who learned 9 languages just to make sure his story could be told to anyone who would listen. Elena claimed her dignity today not by taking it from Richard, but by refusing to let him strip it away. Before Marcus Chen forgot Elena's name, he taught her that languages were bridges between worlds, that communication was the most powerful tool humanity possessed. Elena's 9 languages became her father's final gift. Today, Elena used her inheritance for its intended purpose, not to survive, but to heal, not to hide, but to reveal. The languages Marcus Chen taught his daughter became the languages of justice, and today justice spoke fluently. Long after Elena disappears into the crowd, her words echo. They echo in the Goldman Industries building, in the assistants' hands, in the security guards' minds, in the elevators where employees whisper. But most of all, Elena's words echo in Richard Goldman's chest, where they settle like stones in his heart. The echo reaches beyond the building, beyond the city, beyond the moment. It reaches other daughters who lost fathers to corporate greed. Elena's echo becomes a chorus, a reminder that truth doesn't disappear when you bury it, that genius doesn't die when you steal it. And somewhere in the city, other Marcus Chens work late into the night, creating, discovering, inventing, still believing that their work will make the world better. They work in the echo of Elena's words, in the democracy of truth, in the faith that speaking truth in 9 languages is better than staying silent in one. Because sometimes the person you ignore on the street speaks 9 languages. and 93 ways to remind you what it means to be human. This story touched your heart. You felt invisible while carrying a universe inside you. Share your story in the comments because every voice matters. Every language of the heart deserves to be heard. And you, how many languages does your heart speak when nobody is listening?